Hi, this is Alice Mercer, and I have a special guest here with me. I'm over at CTA State Council today, and today is Saturday. Let's see, what is it, May 31st? What's important about that day? Oh, yes, it's my birthday. And so
hooray!
I've got President Dean Vogel, and he did agree to do it just because it's my birthday, but we've had a long-standing agreement for me to try and do this.
And we finally going to make it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and the reason I do these things, Dean, is I kind of want to go over and let the members know why there is a state council, why we're here. So can you kind of just give a quick rundown?
In a nutshell, like in a local, typically what you've got is you've got a general membership, and then you've got a representative council, and then you've got an executive board, and CTA has that same thing. We have a general membership of roughly 325,000 members. We have actually a rep council of CTA, and it meets 4 times a year, and that's the State Council of Education, of which you are a part. We have roughly 800 representatives that are elected democratically in various representational districts around the state. And then we also have an exec board, and that is the CTA Board of Directors. There are 20 members of the CTA board plus 3 executive officers, 23. And that board meets, almost every month. We don't meet in December and we don't meet in August. And the role of State Council is to basically be the policy-making body of CTA. This Rep Council of CTA is the body that basically gives me my marching orders. And the role of the CTA board, is, as the executive board, is to execute the will of State Council.
Okay, so the reason why I ran for State Council is because I did see this as an important place to go over and affect policy, because CTA can affect policy.
That's right.
Because this policy, we didn't then translate that very often into legislative goals, right?
That's right. Let me give you just a couple examples. On the floor of this very council, a member stood up one day and said, look, I've got no telephone in my classroom, I've got no access to a telephone in my classroom, and that is a danger to my students.
Yeah.
And there was a new business item saying that we had to seek legislation that would provide a telephone for teachers where they didn't have to send a runner to the office or worry about it. I'm talking about an outside line. And that, we have that now.
Right.
And that started on the floor of State Council at CTA.
Yeah, so I've always had phones over in my classroom. I started teaching over in the late 1990s and 2000 era, but there were still a couple classrooms. I had some friends who started in LA Unified that were in classrooms that didn't have phones. Not a good situation. So the next thing I want to ask about is there's been a lot of talk around organizing and the strategic plan, and that's kind of, being a big part of your tenure as president. So you want to talk about what you see. I know it's early, and I don't want to go over and start mourning before long before you're gone, but talk about your legacy for this.
Let me just say, one of my worries for as long as I was here, I mean, even before I was an officer, was that I had this feeling that that person, say, working in Sacramento, trying to be the best third-grade teacher she can be, totally exhausted every single day after she's teaching, has a right to get her voice connected to this body. And theoretically that works because all these members go back and talk to their, but in practicality it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Like we don't do what we've got to be doing organizationally to connect ourselves to the member, and that's really where this whole idea of a strategic plan was born. Was that there are things that we just kind of hold dear, organizationally, born out of what's living in people. For instance, teachers want to have more say over the pedagogical decisions. They feel should be part of that in the classroom. They want to take back their profession. They understand the need to advocate for their profession, but they don't understand what their specific role as a teacher is. We don't do nearly the work we need to do to engage communities. Typically what we've done as an organization, when community engagement is always around, oh my God, we're under attack. We've got to help communities understand how important this is so they'll fight with us. And we do that pretty effectively, but for crying out loud, we should be actively engaged and immersed in our communities day in and day out. It ought to be a situation where when we're under attack, people in the community go, oh my God, teachers are under attack, we got to figure out what to do.
How can we help?
And we have to provide the kind of infrastructure to make that happen. And that's really, I mean, when it gets right down to it, building an organizing culture, engaging communities in an authentic way, taking back our profession, and having an authentic voice in pedagogical decisions at the classroom level, that's all connected to this strategic plan. And it was born out of the work of about 105 members and staff working over the course of about a year and a half. And it's the success or failure of this plan is going to be directly related to how well we're able to operationalize things at the local level.
Well, I'll tell you, that's been like one of the things that's awkward is we do vote over on board members who are outside of our geographic region. So, for instance, we're voting for board members that are from San Francisco and then on up north and kind of out over into some more rural districts. And then K, I don't know the geography of that.
Yeah, K is kind of like the I-10 corridor coming out of Los Angeles, starts kind of around Pasadena and south, and then all the way out to like maybe Rialto.
This is awful. I don't even know the geography of it. But one of the things, because I have to vote on it, that I'm looking at is, and when I've had candidates contact me, is asking them about the strategic plan. What have you done with the organizing? What do you see doing with the organizing? I don't expect them to say, well, I ran this perfect organizing plan where I had the community and the teachers and we were all singing Kumbaya, but kind of that they took a stab over it, stuff like that. On to more contentious issues. We're going to have a discussion tomorrow over about retirement and the pension proposal. I know I've gotten a communication from my local, they're in the middle of bargaining and there's concern about what that means for the district because we're one of those districts where we have a county superintendent who wants us to over-reserve. We have an ex-superintendent who is profligate in his spending, so you know what that adds up to. Pain at the bargaining table. And we don't want to hear about anything else going up. So can you
let me tell you that we've been talking about the unfunded mandate around STRS for probably about 10 years, and about 5 years ago we realized that if we were actually going to do anything about it, we had to pretty much take charge of it. And so we started talking a lot more specifically about what has to happen. And when you think about STRS, basically there was a promise, there was a covenant between three specific groups: the teachers or the employees, the members, the districts, and the state. And that triumvirate basically said, we will work together to build this plan. And when the economy was exploding and we had more money than we could imagine, that was just incredible. We even did crazy things like we said, well, the state doesn't have to contribute so much because the plan's 100% funded, and we can even give longevity bonuses to teachers and did all of that stuff. And so over the last 10 years, like when this question started coming up, here's what had happened. The teacher contribution, which since 1962 has been like 8.25%. No, 8%, and the district contribution, which had been 8%, stayed the same. 8% of total comp, 8.25. The state contribution, which at one time was 4.6%, had fallen to zero because the state had stopped contributing.
Pension holiday.
Yeah, and here's another thing. We have members that believe, well, if the state had only kept paying, we wouldn't be in this problem. And that didn't really make the difference. The difference was, in this last 10-year period, we had two of the most traumatic economic collapses in the history ever since the Great Depression. We had the dot-com bubble burst, and we had the housing market collapse. And so what happened was that most of the STRS money is in the stock market, investments, and so we lost considerable amounts. A couple years ago, State Council directed the Executive Board to initiate conversations with STRS to form a work group to work in conjunction with our retirement committee to build some kind of a protocol or a policy, or let's say principles of how we should go about fixing this. And here's what they said. They said, you know, everybody has to be paying, and when it gets right down to it, everybody's going to have to pay more. Teachers are going to have to pay more. Districts are going to have to pay more. The state is going to have to pay more. So what we were hoping for was that we could keep the teacher contribution increase, say like under 5%. We were hoping that like we could get the district to move from like say maybe 8.25% to maybe 15%, and that the state would actually pay their 4.6%. The governor contacted us and said, we want to start talking with you about a plan we have to address the STRS unfunded mandate right now. And that was born out of the notion that everybody agrees with, especially all the economy people. The longer you put it off, the more money you end up having to pay. So let's do this as soon as possible. And when they put out, teachers go from 8% to 10.25. Oh my God, they're only asking teachers to contribute 2.5% more, and we were thinking probably 5%. And districts were going to go to 19.1%, and we were thinking maybe, you know, just to 15%. And that the state was going to go all the way to 6.1%. We thought, well, there's got to be a catcher somewhere. At the same time, we were thinking, you know, that district's going to 19.1, that might be a little harsh. Well, the interesting thing is, the current proposal by the governor has the district moving only 1.7% more in the first year. And so right away districts started complaining, well, you know, we can't afford 1.7%. The amazing thing to me is that so many of those districts are sitting on 10% reserve, 15% reserve, 20% reserve.
And what's an adequate amount generally considered?
The statutory reserve limit is 3%.
Okay.
So districts are expected to hold 3% in reserve. School Services, which is the primary advisor to school districts, recommends staying at 7%. We've got districts with over 100% reserve, mostly small rural districts. But the question I asked, you know, I've got a lot of friends and professional connections in districts because I represent us on the Education Coalition. I know all the AXA leadership and the CSBA leadership. That's the school board group and the administrative group. And they look at me and they say, you're going to kill my district. And I say, you can't afford 1.7% more? Oh, by the way, how much reserve do you have in your district? And they say, well, 17%. I say, well, what do you think reserve is for? Well, we're saving it for a rainy day, and still, I said, let me tell you what reserve is for. It's for unexpected expenses. My hunch is that the governor's proposal that you got to pay 1.7% more next year is unexpected, and the reserve is the right place to take that. Now, we've been getting so much pushback, and I'm really excited about the argument we're going to have tomorrow because we're going to hear this. But what I anticipate, and we've already started negotiating with the finance department again, because I believe that what districts are really asking for and what locals are asking for is to stall off this initial payment. So, for instance, let's say we don't do anything the first year. You have zero from the districts. That 1.7% has to land somewhere. So what that means is somewhere 5 years out or 7 years out, you're going to have to pay more.
But it's not as effective that way.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And you know, the governor's position is the sooner we tackle this, the less money we're going to pay overall.
So we should go over and start with a small amount.
Yeah.
I'm remembering that our district's we were pretty low reserved.
Yeah.
So it's probably still going to be a problem for us.
Here's another problem that we have. We had members turn out in unprecedented numbers to pass Prop 30.
Right.
And so here we have the first year that we have, you know, a real genuine opportunity to get some of that Prop 30 money and get it into salary or take back furlough days, you know, those kinds of things. And now the governor's talking about this expenditure. It's creating a lot of angst because people are saying, you know, they work so hard and look what they're getting for it. I even had somebody say to me last night that, The word out there is that I cut a deal 2 years ago with the governor that we would support the local control funding formula if he would do the SDRS as soon as possible. And I thought, dang, what an incredible idea.
Why didn't you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, if there is any connection between the two, I would be really surprised to learn about it.
I'm having a feeling, though, in certain districts, and this was going to be painful. Our district, it was going to be painful. One that I see coming up a lot is like Sweetwater, because they had some financial mismanagement. And places like that, there are going to be districts where this is very painful. And like my members were already mad after 30. They were like, okay, when we get them back, class size reduction. And it's like, it ain't happening right away. The district tried to argue that they didn't have to do it at all, that they were never going to have to, and it's like, well, that's not what the state's telling you.
I'll tell you what's really exciting for me is that everything we're talking about right now is going to be acted out on the floor tomorrow.
Yeah.
We've got camps, we've got people, people have already talked to me about how opposed they are and what their plans are to, push back. And, when it gets right down to it, that's what democracy is about. It's messy. It's highly emotionally charged. We're going to have a phenomenal argument and debate tomorrow because we're going to have new business items that have already been submitted around this. They're going to be referred to the retirement committee. They're going to be working on them, and they'll come out of the. That's why I moved the retirement committee to early, so we'd be sure to have everybody in the room to get in this argument. And what I know for sure about it, and it has to do with the trust I have in the people that come to this work, is that we will get into a very contentious argument and debate, and we will land somewhere. And that somewhere will be marching orders for CTA to move forward in the way we negotiate. My hunch is that not a lot is going to change, but we have already started talking to the Department of Finance about how the burden on the districts in the first 2 years is too great. And so, I think what is going to come out of this body might already be
in play, because it is a dynamic situation as the budget is negotiated, as we always know. Okay, so tonight, phone banking for Tom Torlakson.
For Tom Torlakson.
Yeah, and I've already done my tweets on 3 reasons for Tom and 3 reasons not to vote for Marshall Tuck. I'll be making some phone calls myself. Thank you very much.
Me too. Thank you.
Okay.